Some forms of loneliness don't come from having no one around, but from the quiet beliefs we carry, as if they were truth. Edward once told himself, "I'm fine living alone." That was until he opened an old letter and cried like he hadn't in the past 3 years. If you've ever held yourself back afraid to be a burden, afraid of rejection, then this story might be for you. Edward Mason lived in a small wooden cabin by a lake in Vermont, where time seemed to move more slowly. At 76, he had once been a devoted history teacher, a loving husband, and a firm yet warm father. But now, he lived alone. His wife had passed away 5 years ago from cancer, and his 2 children were busy with their own lives. Phone calls became fewer. Silence had become a familiar companion. That chilly morning, Edward brewed a pot of tea and poured it into an old ceramic coupone his wife had loved. He opened his worn-out address book, and his eyes paused on a familiar name, George Miller, his best friend for over 40 years. His hands trembling, he dialed the number. The phone rang, and then went to voicemail. Edward sat quietly for a moment. Then he searched for George online. What he found stunned him: an obituary. George had passed away the previous year. No one had told him. No one had called. He looked back at the names in his address book. Many had been crossed out. Others were simply unreachable. He closed the book and muttered under his breath, "They've probably forgotten me." That night, he opened a dusty drawer filled with old letters. At the bottom was a small, unopened envelope. The handwriting familiar. It was from his daughter Sarah, who had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Under the warm glow of a reading lamp, Edward sat down and opened the letter. He could only read the first line before the pain overwhelmed him. "Dad, I wish you wouldn't keep everything inside." He closed the letter, tucked it away, and sat still as a quiet ache rose in his chest. He picked up his phone thinking about calling Jamie, his only granddaughter, but then he set it down. "She's busy. I don't want to bother anyone," he thought. His eyes wandered to the lake, where maple leaves were falling. He quietly stepped out to the porch and sat in his wooden chair. Memories passed through his mind. Times he had wanted to open up but didn't. "Even if I said something, no one would understand," he thought. 2 days later, Jamie came to visit. She brought a small gift, a watercolor painting Edward had once made for Sarah when she was little. When he looked surprised, Jamie smiled and said, "Because I missed you, Grandpa." Edward was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "You only came because you felt obligated, right?" Jamie didn't answer. She gently placed the painting on the table. "I've had it in my room for 20 years, she said. "Mom used to say, Dad painted this with all his heart." Edward stared at the painting, then at Jamie, and something inside him softened. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen, no longer just a shadow in someone else's life. That night, he reopened Sarah's letter. He read every word. Each sentence pierced an old wound, but he didn't turn away this time. One line made him stop and hold the paper to his heart. "Dad, don't think you're useless. You were the only one who made me feel like I wasn't invisible." The next morning, Edward made 2 cups of tea, one for himself, one for the empty chair across from him. Then he wrote letters to 2 old friends just to say hello. When Jamie said goodbye, he hugged her a little longer. His eyes seemed to shine a little more. A week later, he called his son. After a few awkward pleasantries, his son said, "Dad, how you live is your business, but don't expect me to drop everything just because you're lonely." The call ended cold and quick. Edward sat there, broken. "I tried to open up. I tried to change, but it still doesn't matter." For 3 days, he didn't leave the house. Didn't respond to Jamie's texts. Didn't eat. Didn't sleep. Just sat, watching the still lake. The wind rang the chimes outside his window. A voice echoed in his mind. "I'm used to living alone. I don't need anyone anymore." But this time, he heard the lie in that sentence. That night, he read Sarah's letter again slowly. The final line made him break down completely. If one day you feel like you don't need anyone anymore, it might just be because you're afraid of being hurt again." He cried deep, silent tears, the kind that melt the ice that had built up for years. The next morning, he cleaned the cabin, dusted old photo frames, washed the teacups. He called Jamie back and wrote a letter to his son. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel alone. I don't expect you to come back. But if someday you wish to, I'll be here." From that day on, Edward began each morning with a small act of kindness. A blessing, a thank you, a gentle return to life. He made tea, sat on the porch, and sometimes even smiled. He no longer waited for someone else to understand him. He understood himself. And that was enough. One afternoon, Edward sat on the porch, warm tea in hand, watching the sunset shimmer on the lake. The wind chimes softly rang. On the table was a new notebook filled with names of people he wanted to call next week. If you've ever told yourself, "I'm fine on my own," ask yourself this instead. Do I truly not need anyone? Or am I just afraid of being hurt again? Edward Mason isn't the only one who's felt this way. There are millions of older adults each day carrying quiet thoughts that slowly distance them from the world. Not because they aren't loved, but because the beliefs they hold keep them from receiving that love. And maybe you've also had one of these thoughts, seemingly harmless, but quietly making you feel more alone each day. Let's begin with the first one. 1. I'm no longer useful. Have you ever felt like you're no longer needed in this world? No one calls to ask for advice. No one asks for your help. No one seems to need your answer, your lived experience. And slowly, you begin to believe you've lost your value. Edward Mason had once been a history teacher for over 30 years, inspiring countless students. But then came retirement. His wife passed away. His children grew up and moved on. The phone stopped ringing. The requests stopped coming. And some mornings, he'd just sit there, staring at the still water, unable to even make tea. One day, he opened his old teaching notebook and closed it just as quickly, because the thought hit him, no one needs me anymore. This is a quiet pain many elders carry but rarely name. When you're no longer the breadwinner. When no one says, "Can you help me with this?" When people call you retired instead of your name, you begin to pull back. You stop offering advice. You stop showing up, and slowly, you disappear from your own life. But what really happened? The loneliness didn't come from the outside. It came from within, from the belief that you have nothing left to give. But that belief is a lie. Because one day, Edward found his daughter's letter, and in it she wrote, "You were the only one who made me feel like I wasn't invisible." That one sentence broke the silence in his soul. He once gave his daughter the gift of being seen. And now through her letter, she gave that same gift back to him. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once said, "Though the body may age and grow weak, the heart of compassion and wisdom never fades. One who listens, lives mindfully, and shares remains a light in the world." You don't have to stand in front of a classroom to be useful. Your presence, when mindful, a warm smile, a story shared, a patient ear, is a gift to the world. You don't need to do something big to be of service. You only need to return to the small things you can offer mindfully. For example, making a slow cup of tea for your partner or an elderly neighbor. Telling a childhood story to your grandchild, maybe, about the old marketplace or a mischievous school day. Writing down the beautiful lessons you've learned in life, so one day, someone can read and learn from them. These are quiet contributions, but they matter deeply. And if you ever feel like you have nothing left to offer, try this short 5-minute morning meditation. Today, I choose to be present. Sit upright, close your eyes, breathe gently. Then ask yourself, who can I send a small blessing to today? What small act can I do with care and kindness? What memory from my youth still fills me with gratitude? This reflection is not just a meditation. It's an invitation to be kind, to be a source of gentle wisdom, to slow down enough to see the beauty others overlook. You are not useless. You've simply forgotten that your mindful presence is the gift this world is missing. 2. I don't want to bother anyone. Have you ever picked up the phone, then put it down, afraid you might be bothering someone? You miss them. You wanted to check in. You needed a voice to soothe your heart. But then the thought came, I'm old, they're busy, why bother them? If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. Edward Misanthaman, who lived alone by the lake, often wanted to call his granddaughter, Jamie. He loved her deeply. Many times, he picked up the phone, then quietly put it down. Each time, telling himself, she's young, she's busy, I'd just be bothering her. And so, day after day, Edward never called. Meanwhile, Jamie, busy as she was, also hesitated to call too often, because she, too, didn't want to bother him. When two people feel the same fear, distance is created even when love still exists. Many older adults live in that kind of silence. No calls, no messages, no check-ins. Not because they don't care, not because they've stopped loving, but because they don't want to be a burden. Ironically, it's this fear of being a bother that often makes us feel more alone. When we stop reaching out, others hesitate to reach in. When we always wait for someone else to take the first step, relationships slowly fade. And one day, we think we've been forgotten. But in truth, we were the ones who stepped away. A quiet tragedy. The love is still there, but no one dares to say it aloud. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha once taught, presence with mindfulness is never a burden. A message sent from kindness is like a flower blooming in the heart of the world. A sincere call, a heartfelt message, is never a bother. It's a way to water the seed of connection inside both hearts. If you've ever thought calling them would just bother them, try this simple practice today. Take a small piece of paper, write down 3 names people you've wanted to call but never did. Choose just one of them. Send a short message. Hi, I just wanted you to know you've been on my mind today. No need to reply right away. That's it. No expectations. No pressure. No obligations. Then, leave it alone. Let the seed of connection rest gently in the soil. Each morning, you can also try this mindful reflection. Sit quietly. Place a hand over your heart. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Ask yourself, if I called someone today, not to ask for help, not to complain, but just to connect, who would it be? If a name comes to mind, that's a sign. Love still lives in you. And remember this, you may be afraid to call because you don't want to intrude, but someone out there is quietly wishing someone would remember them. You don't have to wait for others to reach out. A gentle touch from the heart is enough. 3. Even if I say it, no one will understand. Have you ever wanted to share something deeply personal, but paused, hesitated, and then stayed silent? Maybe you stood at the edge of a story, but turned away because a voice inside whispered, no one will understand anyway. If that's you, you're not alone. At 76, Edward Mason had so many things he wished he could say. Memories from his teaching days, lessons from a lifetime lived. Even moments when he missed his late wife so much, it physically hurt. But whenever he thought about opening up, he'd just sit quietly, staring out at the autumn lake. Leaves falling, wind blowing, water still, and him silent. Even if I spoke, they wouldn't get it. So he stayed silent another day. Many elders live between two worlds. One that rushes forward, talks fast, thinks shallow, and one inside them quiet, thoughtful, layered with meaning. This gap often makes older people feel they don't get me. I speak a different language now. Might as well stay quiet. But the more we stay silent, the heavier the heart becomes. When no one understands us, we stop speaking. When we stop speaking, we stop sharing. When we stop sharing, we begin to close our hearts. Quietly, slowly, but surely, from someone who once spoke freely, we become someone who only watches. From someone who once opened their heart, we become someone who sees everyone as distant. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught, not everyone will understand us. But if we never speak, no door will ever open. The listener may not fully grasp our truth, but the act of speaking with sincerity is already a door knocking on the world. You don't have to tell your whole life story. You don't have to explain every feeling. You can start with something small. Share a favorite morning from your youth. Say to your grandchild, "I've been missing your grandmother a lot today." Or simply say, "Lately my heart feels a little heavy, I'm not sure why." Genuine words will always find the ears that are ready to listen. Try this today. Pick up a notebook. Write down one thing you've always wanted to say but never did. Choose someone, maybe a grandchild, an old friend, a neighbor, and begin with, "I once wanted to tell you this." Don't worry if they understand. Don't expect a deep response. Just give yourself permission to speak. Because every time you speak, you reopen a door, not just for others to step in, but for your own light to shine out. Now, close your eyes. Breathe slowly, and ask yourself, what am I holding inside that, if spoken aloud, might make me feel just a little lighter? Maybe no one needs to fully understand. Maybe all it takes is your courage to speak. That's how healing begins. You are not forgotten. You are not lost. You've simply been silent for too long. Come back with your voice, however soft, however shaky, because somewhere out there, someone is ready to truly listen, if you dare to speak. 4. People are only nice to me out of politeness. Have you ever received a kind word, and the first thing that came to your mind was, they're just being polite. They don't really mean it. No one truly cares about me. If that's ever crossed your heart, you're not wrong. You've just been hurt before. Edward Mason, alone by the quiet lake, had grown so used to silence that even when someone showed genuine care, he couldn't believe it. One day, his granddaughter Jamie visited. She brought with her an old painting Edward had made for his daughter long ago. She smiled and said, "I missed you, Grandpa." But instead of being touched, Edward blurted out, "You only came because you felt obligated, didn't you?" Jamie froze, not out of offense, but because she understood. Her grandfather had lived in doubt for so long. He could no longer trust kindness. Many elders have known heartbreak, disappointment, neglect, and those wounds form quiet armor, made of mistrust, woven with the belief no one really means it. So even when love shows up, we turn it away. Even when warmth is offered, we say, "Don't bother, it's too much." But that mistrust, it closes the door. When we can't believe others are sincere, we don't accept their care. When we don't accept it, they slowly stop offering it. And soon, love exists on both sides, but no one can reach each other. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, "When one shuts the heart out of fear, they also shut the path to being loved." Kindness is like a drop of rain. If you always carry an umbrella afraid to be wet, you may never know how refreshing that rain can feel. You don't have to believe every kind word instantly, but maybe you can pause your doubt and give kindness a small chance. For example, when someone offers you lunch, instead of saying, "No, that's too much trouble," try simply smiling and saying, "Thank you, I'd love to join you." When your grandchild says, "I love you, Grandma," don't brush it off with, Sure, you say that to everyone." Try holding their hand instead. To receive kindness is the first step in healing the deepest wound of all: lost trust. Today, try these 3 things. 1. When someone is kind, pause your overthinking. 2. Practice saying thank you with no disclaimers. 3. At night, write down one small thing someone did for you that day. Just one, but write it with honesty. You'll begin to see. The world may not be as cold as you feared. Maybe you just wore gray-tinted glasses too long. Now close your eyes, take a slow breath, and ask yourself, if today I believed kindness was real, would I allow myself to feel happy again? If you're not ready, that's okay. But if you're willing to try, even just a little, you may receive a warmth that's been waiting for years. You're not cold. You're not bitter. You've simply been hurt. But every wound can be healed if you allow the light of trust to return. And when you start believing in goodness again, you won't just see others differently. You'll feel lighter yourself, day by day. Thank you for listening. Today, if you allow yourself to believe in kindness again, that's already enough to start a new connection. 5. I'm too old to change. What's the point? Have you ever sat alone on an autumn afternoon and quietly wondered, is there really anything left I can change? I'm old now. Maybe it's just too late. Don't be so quick to believe that thought, because that very belief repeated day after day can turn old age into something unnecessarily heavy and quietly heartbreaking. After Edward finally opened his heart and wrote a letter to his son, he received a cold reply. Dad, how you live your life is up to you, but don't expect me to drop everything just because you feel lonely. Edward sat in silence by the lake. His eyes rested on the painting Jamie had brought him. He sighed. I tried to open up, and I was still rejected. Maybe change really is pointless. Many older people carry a quiet illusion. Old people should just accept things as they are. Change is for the young. So, learning to use a new phone, cooking a new dish, or even initiating a phone call, all begin to feel like things too far out of reach. When we slowly stop believing in our ability to change, life becomes nothing more than repetition. Old conversations, old habits, old thoughts replayed like lukewarm soup. Day after day, no spark. No moment that makes the heart skip. Old age doesn't hurt because of physical weakness. It hurts because of emotional dullness. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, even if a person lives 100 years without awareness, it is better to live a single day with mindful transformation. Change doesn't require years. It starts with one right moment. Edward returned to his cabin. He dusted off his desk, opened his old address book, called Jamie again. With just a few small actions, he broke the cycle of emotional repetition inside himself. You don't need to visit a monastery. You don't need a grand goal. Sometimes, all it takes is making that call, writing that letter, opening that book. Ask yourself, what am I refusing to do just because I believe I'm too old to change? And if the answer is, I don't know, that's a good sign. It means you're ready. Just start by changing this one belief, that you can still transform. Because change doesn't come from youth. Change comes from a heart willing to awaken. 6. They haven't called, maybe they've forgotten me. Have you ever had this moment? You open your phone, scroll through your contacts, but no one comes to mind to call. Worse, maybe you did call, and no one picked up. You left a message, and no one replied. A day passed, then 2, then a week. And in that silence, a thought creeps in. Maybe they've forgotten me. It's not just a passing idea. It's a quiet wound, subtle but deep. For many older adults, silence cuts sharper than words. As the years go by, relationships shrink. Loved ones pass away. Friends drift. Children get busy. One unanswered message. Something completely normal in modern life. can feel like abandonment in the heart of someone aging alone. The mind starts spinning stories. Maybe they don't need me anymore. Maybe I've become a burden. Maybe I really am forgotten. But here's the truth. It's not the silence that hurts us. It's the meaning we give to the silence. One autumn morning, Edward opened his old address book. He dialed the number of his best friend to wish him a happy birthday. No answer. Then he remembered. That friend had passed away last year. He stared at the pages, noticing how many names had been crossed out. Those still alive hadn't reached out in a long time. Edward closed the book with a sigh. Maybe they've forgotten me. That one sentence light, as a whisper, weighed on him like a stone. From one missed call, the mind jumps to conclusions and builds a false belief. I no longer matter in anyone's heart. That belief becomes a wall. It stops elders from calling again, from showing up, from sharing anything at all. Not because they've been abandoned, but because they've quietly abandoned themselves in fear. Even relationships with hope, still left, start to fade in the silence. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, suffering arises not from what is, but from the stories we attach to it. See things as they are, no more, no less. No reply simply means no reply. A missed call simply means a missed call. It doesn't mean you're unwanted. It doesn't mean you're unimportant. Those thoughts? They're the creations of a mind spinning in loneliness. In Vipassana meditation, there's a practice called gratitude through action. When you're not remembered, be the one who remembers first. When you're not called, be the one who reaches out. Not to demand a reply, but to keep your heart open. A call isn't just a connection to another person. It's a reconnection to yourself. Because the one who initiates is the one who still believes. To end this reflection, take a few quiet seconds. Close your eyes. Inhale slowly. Exhale gently. And ask yourself, could I become the one who starts the connection? Instead of always waiting for someone to reach me first? Maybe someone out there needs you, but they're just as afraid as you are. And maybe you are the first door they need to see open. You are not forgotten. You simply need to believe. A loving heart always finds its way to another. Loneliness doesn't come because no one calls us. It comes when we stop calling others. And that is something you can change starting today. 7. I'm used to living alone. I don't need anyone anymore. This sentence sounds strong on the surface, but often hides a deep wound underneath. Many older adults, after enough disappointment, misunderstanding, or rejection, quietly withdraw. They say, I'm used to it. I'm fine. But what they often mean is, I'm just scared of being hurt again. After his son's cold response, Edward spent hours sitting silently by the lake. He didn't eat, didn't speak, didn't even reply to Jamie's messages. In his mind, one sentence kept repeating, I'm used to being alone. I don't need anyone. But this time he heard the lie in it. It wasn't strength. It was fear of being let down again. When elders believe they don't need anyone, they begin to reject invitations, avoid phone calls, ignore moments of care. Isolation stops being a situation and becomes a room they've locked themselves into. Loneliness stops being an emotion and becomes a shelter made of fear. In the words of the Buddha, the greater the ego, the deeper the suffering. When the self no longer sees itself as separate, love flows freely. Isolation doesn't come from the world. It comes from the ego's attempt to protect itself. But that protection blocks compassion, connection, and peace. Healing doesn't mean becoming dependent. It means allowing yourself to soften, to receive a caring gaze, a gentle question. Without judging yourself as weak or bothersome, step out onto your porch, take 3 deep breaths. Call someone not to ask for help. but just to share a small memory, a blessing, or a hello. And notice, did something inside you loosen? Ask yourself, what am I protecting by building this wall of loneliness? Am I truly okay, or just afraid of being disappointed again? Some sentences sound strong, but they're really cries from a heart that still longs to be touched. And if today you realize you still wish someone would sit beside you, that's not weakness. That's a sign that your heart is still alive, still willing to love and be loved. Dear friend, sometimes we feel forgotten, but maybe what we're really missing isn't someone calling us, but the courage to take one small step forward ourselves. If your heart feels closed today, try opening it with a simple hello, a message, or a smile. Because as we age, what matters most isn't how many people remember us, but how much love we still have left to give. Live like a small, steady flame. Even when the winds of life blow hard, keep glowing. And if this message touched your heart, leave a comment below. I'll be the one to reach out first. Together, we'll light up a space where growing old never has to mean growing alone.